Welcome back to another epidose of these crazy people that just eat me and can't stop talking about it. Today we're doing a little short rib. We're talking about the mental effects of changing your diet. So, Jules, it's been a while, so why don't you go first?
Hi, everybody. I do just letting you know I'm Neurodiva. I have a little other side. My Neurodiva. I have a channel. Come check it out. I talk about autism and having two autistic kids and our journey and just things a lot that are based on science. I do not. I guess that's part of my autism. Like I like structural. I like logic. I like things that have order. I talk about those kinds of things and the theories that pop up. And I was diagnosed as a kid back in elementary school with ADHD. And then at 20, I was diagnosed with autism. But then, interestingly, at 42, because it was last year, I was diagnosed as not on the spectrum. They could not figure, they could not see that I was autistic at all. So that's really kind of interesting. So, yeah, that's my story.
Janice, what do you got to throw in?
Nice. I've never been formally diagnosed with anything, but I always had like ADHD. I was very like anxious all the time, like depressed a lot during my 20s, I suppose, 20s and 30s. I went on antidepressants for a year one time, and my family, we have a lot of mental illness. We have obsessive compulsive disorder, paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar disorder.
Wow.
Everybody in my immediate family has like sort of like crippling anxiety and or depression. My dad has like full on like obsessive compulsive disorder. So basically I was always just having issues with attention, executive function, like having trouble making decisions, sequencing tasks, a lot of anxiety and all of that. And then when I switched to carnivore, basically like that stuff, I was a vegetarian for like 10 years, so that basically just made it like I was completely like moody and unfocused. I was always tired, always cold, and I just had like I was weak, kind of just like weak constitution, like couldn't not resilient, couldn't really handle life, um, just troubled all the time. And now, ever since I've been carnivore for almost 4 years now, I feel like a totally different person. Like I'm just very stable. I'm calm. I'm happy. I have maybe here and there, actually, since I stopped drinking any caffeine, I don't feel really nearly any, like very little to low or to no anxiety on most days. And a lot of focus, mental clarity. I'm decisive. I feel just solid. I mean, even things like social anxiety, I don't feel like I just joined a new gym and kind of like a fancy town where in the past I would have been like, oh, too intimidated to go there. But
Hmm.
I feel like I just go in there now and I'm like, I know I don't know anyone, but I feel like I could just take things, I can handle things. So yeah, and I don't miss being like, I used to cry all the time, like as a child, and like I used to be tired all the time and like really moody and really negative, kind of because of, I think we have the paranoid schizophrenia and obsessive compulsive disorder. I think I would, one therapist told me I had like obsessive anxiety, like just the sort of
Mm.
ruminating and all this. And I feel like when I changed my diet, like that just kind of went away. It's like you have like, if you took your brain out, I just popped a new brain in, and it doesn't function like that anymore. So
Yeah, I understand that because speaking of, I forgot to talk about the anxiety thing, but I don't recall having depression really, but I do recall having like a lot of anxiety. So I would say the weirdest things to people. Like I didn't think it was weird until like people would react. Like you can tell autistic people, they still can see that like your reaction is kind of like turned off from us. We can tell. So but the thing is, we don't know what we said exactly a lot of the times of what could have turned you off from us. But I do recall those many of those times where people would be like, "Oh my gosh, she's so weird." Like that was such a weird answer. Oh my gosh, Tom, you know?
Yeah, I had a friend just a couple weeks ago, a guy I'd known for 30 some years, remind me how awkward I am. So, you know, it's a thing. So yeah, yeah, I had a lot of similar experience to you guys. I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was like 38, but I was
Mhm.
diagnosed with a bunch of who had like learning disabilities and stuff like that when I was in school, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, now we would just, you know, most terms like dyslexia are like really common, but back then they actually like diagnosis was something like visual memory inhibitants or something like that. And so later on there's like somebody's like, oh yeah, you're just it's dyslexia, you know. It's we forget sometimes that the terminology for things like that haven't really been in the literature that long, because like we hear about autism and dyslexia all the time now, right? And
Mhm.
even things like synesthesia where, you know, your senses are stimulated but you have a different response, like you hear a sound and you see a color or something like that, or you feel a sensation rather than hearing it. So like people are starting to uh, be aware of those things. You know, everybody's kind of aware of them now, but when I was a kid, I mean, I'm 52 now, so when I was a kid, those things were less known, you know, and they were less standardized for sure. So, but I've noticed, well, when I got diagnosed with autism too, I was also diagnosed with, you know, like idiopathic anxiety, you know. So, at the same time, which I never it never even occurred to me that everybody wasn't like that. But then, you know, change your diet and then that starts going away and you realize it like influenced almost everything you every choice you made, everything you said or didn't say, or, you know, plans you made. So like I used to my friends would always coax me into going doing fun stuff, you know, which was a real blessing because I probably would have done a lot less. But um then, you know, probably I think it was in 2018, you know, I'd been talking to Sean Baker online, watching his content and been in Facebook groups with him and stuff. And he was doing the rowing competition because he was an indoor rowing champ at the time. I think he gave it up now, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see that. And everybody's like, you're gonna voluntarily go to a crowded public place for a
Yeah.
sporting event? They're like, what the hell, you know? And I realized then I was kind of turning the corner. I wanted to do those things. I wasn't as anxious about it. And I mean, even when my friends have talked me into doing this, a lot of it, you know, from the time I was like in college on, a lot of it just involved drinking because it's so much easier to enjoy things when you're drinking because you're not anxious, you know.
Yep.
Except
Yep.
the next day, you're usually more anxious than ever. But you know, it's that thing of borrowing happiness overnight with compound interest, you know. So so yeah, but I noticed like my dyslexic symptoms are a lot better, especially, you know, like now like you were saying earlier, like my sleep quality is better, you know. So if I get sleep, like I don't mix up numbers, and so I find myself remembering, you know, like new phone numbers, long phone numbers, without even trying to, not even intending to. And in the past, it was mostly like if you can't keep it in order, you can't remember the whole thing because like you start trying to remember it, and then you never even get to the end, no matter what order it's in, you know. So and then like my reading speed went up and stuff like that too. So definitely anxiety got better, and of course my big thing was arthritis, you know, that got better really fast. The anxiety and dyslexia seem to like gradually be getting better, you know. And I don't think any diet undoes autism, as it were, because I mean, the brain is structured different. You know, you can do an MRI or a CAT scan and actually see the differences.
Mhm.
But I think it all comes back to just mitochondrial activity all
Yeah.
over the body, right? You know, it's like when it's properly fueled, it's doing its job, producing energy and, you know, signaling all the things it signals. And so, you know, I think physically and mentally we get better, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that because that's interesting that you brought that part up as far as the mitochondria. If we're talking about that, and those of you guys who don't know, I'm actually got into Tom. I don't think I told you I was certified nutrition at first, but now I actually delved into functional nutrition and functional medicine.
Mm.
So like now I understand why us autistic people, even ADHD, all of us have an insulin resistance in the brain, and therefore we cannot use. And to break that down even further, like we cannot use glucose properly and converting it to energy in our brains. So the only what can only really what we can utilize the best is ketones. So that's what's really interesting about autism and ADHD is that people don't realize the mitochondria works well. The whole ATP mitochondria works well if you have the proper uh, food source that can convert into energy. If you have things like sugar, carbs that cannot convert into energy properly, because of insulin problem, insulin issues, all of that, it, we cannot function well. Our brain cannot repair. It cannot develop properly. So that's why this is a huge deal. That's why this is actually becoming a huge movement, and that's why we all see the improvements that we have through this. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's a great way to cap it off. It's like you do have some cells that have to run on glucose,
Yep.
but your body will always make enough of it. And when you have too much glucose in your system, one of the biggest problems with eating carbohydrates, large amounts of carbohydrates, is also that the reactive oxygen species in the cell, the byproduct of the metabolization of the sugar or the carbohydrate, pollutes the cell beyond the cell's ability to detoxify it. So like you said, we get something, we call it insulin resistance. Maybe it's just the Randall cycle at work. The things get locked out of the cell that are energy sources because of the high sugar content, and then cells that run best on ketones are deprived of it because we don't make hardly any ketone bodies when you're on a high carbohydrate diet. So both sets of cells, the ones that thrive on ketone bodies like beta hydroxybutyrate and the cells that run exclusively on glucose, both wind up suffering because of the high blood sugar, high insulin, and things like the Randall cycle, right? Once the cells replete, it locks out fuel. So
yeah, I mean, we're not supposed to be like that, right? We're not supposed to be constantly on high sugars, high carbs. In fact, all of the sugars and everything are stripped of the fibers and its nutrients, and then having to be added like synthetically, or I mean, they put those vitamins in there and they think that's okay. That's not our natural way that our body would use that. Even those supplements they put in higher doses because our body cannot extract that well. The most bioavailable is meats and foods. That's why when it goes through our body, not a lot of it comes out. If you're on a strict carnivore diet, you will notice that, like, not a lot comes out. And you're like, whoa, where is everything? You're like, maybe it's stuck. Like, no, it's not. Your body used it, okay? So yeah, it can break it down, and that's what it's supposed to happen. And for vitamins, I mean, you use it because I think a lot of us are metabolically unhealthy. We are not able to extract anymore. It could be from our acidity in our stomach is not high enough. It could just be our small intestines is not able to extract it much anymore because we've just screwed it up for so long. So in that case, we would need to sometimes supplement with exogenously with other supplements and stuff like that. So that's why I really put it there.
Yep, that's nicely put. You got anything else to add, Janice?
Yeah, sorry, you're quiet.
No, I was just wondering actually, because I keep thinking about what you guys are saying and how messed up I was as a kid, like when you're developing, because my parents were on like a high carb, zero fat, like the Pritikin diet when we were kids. So they were trying to get us, it's like it was some like crazy
Nathan Pritikin, yeah,
where it was just like no, like you wanted to have like no saturated fat, like no fat in general, and then like high carb and like high fiber, and I remember just feeling like just crazy as a kid, like just so hungry. And then once in a while, like maybe once a month, we would have a barbecue, and I was just like wanting to eat all the chicken and all the beef, and just like desperate to get the meat, but without really knowing it. But I was wondering, so Jewelz, you said your kids, like do you feed them like carnivore then, or?
Yeah. So oddly enough, my one child is more ketovore. The other one is, I would say ketogenic. Actually, maybe I'm not sure what I categorize him because he does have chickpea pasta, which is lower carb, but like he doesn't like meat, which is the weirdest thing to me. Yeah. I struggle with this, so I have to hide a lot of things in his food. So he'll eat bacon, he'll eat
Okay.
bacon, he'll eat eggs. So, oh my God. But he won't eat.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You can go a long ways on bacon and eggs, that's for sure.
That's true. That's true. But he won't have it any other way other than scrambled, and he will only have his bacon. Just it has to be crispy. Um, but he won't eat beef, nothing, pork, nothing. Like,
Wow. No,
yeah,
not
it's
even
weird.
like ground beef or hamburger or anything, or?
Nope. I try and I try to little thin slice, and like he still won't eat it.
Hmm.
He just shoot. He's a bread or not bread. I use like the carnivore bread, so which is fine because at least I throw in like I put the ancestral farms like like organ meat things inside of it, and so it's fine. But still, I'm struggling with this kid. Like it's funny. But the other one who is more moderate autistic, Tetsu is on I would say higher on the spectrum. But Raiden is my older one, who's 6 years old, is moderate autism. So he's almost nonverbal, but now he's been talking a lot more. He's been, yeah, it's kind of all of a sudden. It's almost like, Tom was saying how when we did, when he was talking about he was able to change from not being able to read well because of dyslexia, but being able to gradually improve on that. Just like, our brains were no plastic actually. So we have, through neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, your brain can just change and grow new. I'm sorry, that's my child. You can grow new synapses. It physically changes, it alters. You can it will add new divots to the areas of parts of your brain. So people think that it won't change, and even at an old age it won't change. That is 100% not true, because you see cases of people who have strokes suddenly like talk one day again, like they stop drooping again. Like, it's just, you'll see things like that a lot.
Yeah, no, the brain does. I mean, that's basically how we learn, is by rewiring, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I made the comment about autistic brains looking physically different. So the overall shape will tend to stay the same, and but as far as learning things, or sometimes abilities are repathed through different parts of the brain when part of it's damaged, stuff like that. So stuff like that is going on all the time. So yeah, that's
Yep.
normal for humans to be able to do that. And I think that's part of it. You find that, people, even that are older, that you would think would be past that point, if they're on the right diet, they seem to be able to recover and learn new things, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I mean, our brains, especially autistic people, you see us stim a lot. Or I'm not going to say generally, because not all of us do, but some of us that do stim, a lot of it has to do with the fight or flight, like the amygdala. The amygdala is slightly larger, well, especially when we're children. Apparently it grows a lot faster than a normal child, or neurotypical child, and then the body catches up, but it's still slightly larger. It causes us a lot of grief, because those who know what the amygdala is, which is the fight, flight, or freeze, ours is a bit sensitive. Like we are constantly like that. So, but like through this diet, I've noticed that too, that I'm not as sensory overloaded. I'm not as anxious. I have noticed the difference, and I think that's what really made the difference was when I was on the Atkins diet. Like I don't, no one stopped. People stopped calling me strange, and occasionally I'll still say really weird things, but but it wasn't as often, and I was able to make friends, a lot of friends, and it changed my life. But I hated clubbing. I hated it. Not my one friend, my one close friend that I had, she wanted to go out all the time, and I wanted to sleep at 10 p.m., but she wanted to go out. So, and I'm always in the corner by myself, and it's all loud. But yeah, the best part of it was going out to eat hot dogs. The LA vending machines. I was in LA. I forgot to tell you, Tom. I was in LA for like 10 years in my 20s. So the guys have the best hot dog vending machines, like vendors, like lined up with the bacon wrapped hot dogs. Oh my God. Old oil and everything. I don't know what they have in there, but it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I wrap this one up and do another one.
Sure.
That was a good job. Thank you. So everybody out there, I hope you enjoy it. And this is one of our shorter videos for we realize not everybody has a big attention span. Not everybody wants to listen to us for 2 hours at a time. So we're going to do some short ones too. So until next time, everybody, eat some meat, feel better. Whatever you do, don't fall down the carb hole.